So we're joined today by Sean Evans, who is the host of Hot Ones on YouTube through First We Feast. And the first question I have for you is, being from Crystal Lake Central High School, do you say you're from Chicago or don't you?
Well, to people that know, like, so if you're from Illinois or that area, then I'll always say Crystal Lake. But if once you kind of break containment and go to New York or start traveling around, you're in Los Angeles or whatever, the grounding thing is always Chicago. Like if I say Crystal Lake, then I have to talk for another 5 or 6 minutes about it. Chicago, bam, done. So when I'm abroad, Chicago. If I'm local, Crystal Lake.
Love it. For those doing audio only, Sean is wearing one of the new City Connect Southside jerseys. Sean is a Sox fan. What is your very first, youngest, vivid Sox memory?
So it's actually like one of my core memories. Like one of the earliest was on or about my 4th birthday. My dad wanted to take me to the old Comiskey Park. So I remember the game was in 1990, pretty early in the season. And I remember the game because it was Bat Day. It was commemorative Bat Day back when they did that. And the bat stayed with me my whole life. Like we'd play backyard baseball with it. It's probably still in my dad's garage. But it was a significant game because the pitcher for the Yankees that game was Andy Hawkins, who ended up throwing a no-hitter against the White Sox and losing like 3 or 4-0 or something. And I think baseball ended up changing the rule about no-hitters after that. Like you had to throw 9 innings. And then from there kind of was just, collecting Frank Thomas baseball cards and the Robin Ventura poster on my wall and wearing the big hurt cleats in Little League. And then the half off Tuesday night games all the way through school. Me and my friends used to go all the time and just watching from there, playing baseball my whole life. So the Sox are like the grounding thing, like the summers that kind of pace out my year and have been pretty much my whole life.
What were you and your friends like at Sox games?
Well, I think it was a rowdy bunch. I remember the teams back then would have been like the sort of Jose Valentin years, like Frank Thomas years. That was sort of the half off Tuesday games, the Mark Burley years, and we would be not as rowdy. Early 20s, it got a little bit rowdy and started moving to the bleachers and people yelling a little bit more, but overall, I'm a very chill sports fan. Like if me and my brother are watching a game, it's chill. We might as well be like those guys that keep score while the game is going. Like I'm personally chill. Some of my friends, savages.
So July 1st, 1990, Andy Hawkins, yep. That's a famous game.
Yeah, and that was my baptism to the White Sox, and I guess maybe what led me through this whole thing. But yeah, such a significant game, and I'll remember it. It's not like I can remember the game because I was so young. It would have been like just after my 4th birthday. So, but the bat stayed with us for forever. And it was good to see the old Comiskey Park. And I still remember being in awe of the game then, like just seeing the arc of a fly ball or how hard these guys were throwing. It really was that first sort of sensory overload that made me fall in love with baseball.
Do you remember if you got the bat when you walked in or walked out?
I do remember. So they probably wouldn't do this anymore, but it was when we walked in. I remember this vividly. Like it's like if you go to the grocery store and they had all the produce on those big wooden, like how they have just the fruit displayed and the vegetables displayed. It was exactly like that. I still remember walking into the stadium and then just seeing these massive banks of just bats and bats and bats, and they're just handing them out. And then they were bats that you could really play with. I don't think they do anything like that anymore, but 1990, a different time.
And Greg Hibbard took a perfect game into the 6th. So not to nerd out Jason and Sean, but the first 29 batters that day were all retired. I mean, that's a pretty good first game, wouldn't you say, Jason?
My gosh. You must have, Sean, you must have thought that nobody ever got on base.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably just sitting there eating nachos and ice cream and just kind of having a good time and soaking it all in. Probably wasn't privy to all the details, but when I look back on it now, I do think to myself, that was a pretty cool first baseball experience to have.
Hey, Sean, I want to ask you about growing up in the Midwest, which we've all done. What was instructive about that? You've been in a lot of different places in your travels, as we have as well. What is it about the Midwestern upbringing that still instructs you to this day?
Well, I was listening to the podcast that you guys did with Bob Odenkirk this week, and he had a discussion in there that I really connected to, where he talked about kind of, not being on the coast or whatever. There's never a part of you in the Midwest growing up that you think, oh, I deserve to be in this show, or I deserve to be on stage, or I deserve your time and investment. Like as Midwesterners, we're probably just so used to just keeping our head down and enjoying our bosses yelling at us for not working hard enough or something like that. So there becomes a point where it kind of breaks containment for you, and you can have this sort of, whoa, do I belong here situation? But I do think that that's where the sort of work ethic comes from, or the sort of, I'm going to make sure, whether it's fueled by like fear of humiliation or just respect for the time of the audience is going to spend watching whatever you make, or the time that your guest is going to spend sitting with you. I think that sort of Midwest, sort of like, wow, this is so crazy that I'm here, and not taking any of that for granted, and then really just putting that into the work because you almost don't deserve like you should be there. That I think when he was talking about that on your podcast, I was like, that's exactly true. That's every way that the Midwest and the sensibilities of growing up in that area really shaped who I am as an entertainer.
So I'm picturing young Sean Evans in his teenage years walking around the concourse of now Guaranteed Rate Field. And I'm wondering, what would Sean Evans then like about now Sean Evans? And what would he not like about Sean Evans right now, the famous talk show host? the chicken wing talk show host. Well, I think that, what ends up happening when you kind of get an opportunity is you just start swimming to keep from drowning, and you kind of don't know how far you've gone until you take certain times to look back. And that's always what it can feel like now. So I think old Sean would be in awe of the distance that the new Sean has swam. And what would he not like about the new Sean? Still a Midwest boy at heart, so like, getting a Tom Ford suit to go to Vegas or something. Old Sean would have puked at that, but this is just a symptom of the new Sean. So you've had so many people on the show. I'm sure old Sean would have just been like, oh my gosh, you got all these people. Who is your white whale currently? Who are you seeking that you haven't gotten?
So fans have always been very vocal about the guests that they want to see on the show. So anytime I open my Twitter or like go to an airport or whatever, people are just yelling who they want on the show. And for the longest, that was Gordon Ramsay. And the Gordon Ramsay heat was almost like an albatross growing around my neck, just getting heavier and heavier. It was like almost hard to do the show until we got Gordon Ramsay in the seat because people demanding it. It was just so high. So once we crossed that off, I thought, okay, I'm good. Now we can just kind of do our show. But what ends up happening is when you capture one white whale, the fans just bring another one in and bring another one in and bring another one in. So those are the people I kind of want to cross off the list, just because it can be so stifling the fan demand for these people. So like right now, the number one name on that list is Keanu Reeves. If you look in a comment on a YouTube video, put up an interview, be so proud of it, and people be like, yeah, this is great, but where's Keanu Reeves? So Keanu Reeves is that name that's so high right now. And I think 50 Cent was kind of made in a lab for Hot Ones. That's a name that I've been going after for quite some time. And then the classic names like Will Smith, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. These are the names that are just peppered at me at all times.
A compliment to you, Sean, is you're very natural on the air, and that's the it factor. And Jason can attest to this, that the best in the business are kind of who they are all the time. That's really hard to do, right? Because sometimes you want to act or project a little too much, and you end up becoming a different version of yourself. And you're you. And I think that's what people like about you. I wanted to go back to the Champaign-Urbana part, because I have a son who's going to be a junior at Illinois. So tell us about that experience and what you gained from your college experience downstate.
Len's just trying to figure out what he should tell Leo not to do, I think.
Exactly
what's
right.
happening here.
Exactly right.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm the best resource, but I think for me, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that TV, radio, entertainment, that was the thing that I wanted to get in there. The way into the door to me seemed like broadcast journalism. And so that route, that I knew what I wanted my major to be. But when you start off, what I think I think the life lesson of all of that is putting yourself in that position. It's never comfortable. When you're doing this, you're always taking yourself out of your comfort zone, and you're going to be so bad at it at first. When you first grab a mic, or you first have to do a man on the street, or you first are doing the standard out cue and the packages and down to the edit and all of that. And it wasn't really coming together to me early on, but I think it was a professor who I always think about in this way, John Paul, where I started to really kind of get it going into my senior year, and kind of was putting together things that were a little bit different, a little bit better, started really kind of nailing it in a way. And then it was him who kind of took me aside and was like, you could really do this. Like, I really see you. You're so glib. I don't even know if that was like a compliment necessarily, but he's like, you're so glib. You could be a weatherman. And that's when I started to build my confidence and really start to feel like, wow, yeah, this is true. I can really do this. And I think it was the formal education at the University of Illinois, feeling confidence in myself that was put in me. Really, John Paul was the professor who really gave me that. And then it kind of coalesced because my summer job at that time was I was doing architecture tours of Chicago's First Lady, Chicago Architecture Foundation, doing the architecture tours of the Chicago River, and then just churning out this audience where you'd have like 150 people in the boat, doing that like 4 or 5 times a day all summer long. It was that formal education combined with that sort of boots on the ground, really running through a presentation all summer long for like 5 consecutive summers. Those two things together, I think, were the foundation, like the launching pad, the thing that gave me the skills that I needed, or work through those 10,000 hours that I needed to get to where I am now.
Sean, you know how many people have watched you and said to themselves, I think this guy was our tour guide?
Yeah. No, I do. I see that in the YouTube comments sometimes. And you know what? It's possible because the volume that you'd put out in those summers, you'd start at 9 a.m. and you'd work until the sun comes down, just churning tours every 2 hours. And then every tour is 90 minutes. So it's like boat takes off, 90 minutes, returns, 30 minutes to get people off the boat and get back on. And then you go out again. And you're doing that 4 or 5 times a day, 5-6 days a week, all summer long. So I did hundreds and hundreds of tours. I would have recurring dreams where I'd work through a whole shift just in my dream. I'd do like 3 or 4 tours, and then I'd wake up and feel shortchanged, like I didn't get paid for that time. So it was a thing that was hammered into me. And I'm sure there are people that are like, wait a second, that bald guy, I've seen him before.
Sean,
so wait.
I don't want to be a producer, want to know what you have to do a day and film it, right? You got to do it again.
I know.
See who recognizes you and just kind of take yourself back, right? You got to do it.
Yeah, and then to the Chicago Architecture Foundation, what they do, like what makes the tours so good is it's a lot of retired architects or like museum docents or whatever that are doing it on a volunteer basis. So this is the dream for me, like ride out the chicken wing talk show as long as I can, come back to Chicago, get a little spot on the river there, and then that's my Sunday thing is I take it back to the Chicago Architecture Foundation and go back to doing tours. That's how this thing all comes full circle.
We both grew up as wrestling fans. What is your closet favorite I shouldn't love this 90s wrestling gimmick?
Well, I mean, the 90s had a bunch of them. Like, I shouldn't love this wrestling gimmick, but that's what made it compelling. Like, I remember even like the Generation DX situation. I remember when I was in junior high at Hannah Beardsley Middle School, they were sending out letters to everybody's parents, like, stop having them do the Generation DX thing. Like, I remember that vividly, and that being something that I shouldn't have been interested in, but like the whole pageantry of that time and of that era, it's Stone Cold chugging beers, and it was that sort of wild, wild west moment in entertainment that'll just always be that thing, and it could probably never exist again. But I'll just, to answer your question, go with the DX situation, because me and my friends still laugh about those letters that were sent home to parents back in 1998.
What is it that they're so good at storytelling wise? What draws you to wrestling?
It's the soap opera nature of it all. I think it's these complicated Greek tragedy sort of themes, but with guys who are oiled up in costumes. You know, that's what I think is interesting about it. But with like pyrotechnics and Metallica blasting on the speakers, with people chugging beer and taking their shirts off. Like I feel like it's Shakespearean theater for the everyman. It's Shakespearean theater for the nosebleeds, but executed at a pretty high level. And then the commitment of these performers who are taking this on the road, doing this, a show that has such a physical demands, taking it on the road from tour bus, going from place to place, and really just doing it for the love. You know, if you talk to or interview wrestlers, they're so serious about that time and about their performance. You know, you do almost get the sense that you're talking to a Shakespearean actor about these times. And I think like that's what's interesting to me is the high level theme, but with the low level presentation. And that's kind of how I am. I'm high low with everything, you know, like I like either eating at a Linea or off of a truck, you know, like I'm high low with everything that I do. And maybe that's where I connect with wrestling.
The last one from me is about experience. And Jason will tell you, and he and I talk all the time about really trying to embrace new experiences. For somebody listening to this podcast, Sean, who is not an adventurous eater, and in particular is not someone who's into spicy or hot stuff, can you maybe try to sell them on the idea of why there's a benefit into doing something that is out of your comfort zone, particularly with the food stuff? Because I think that is an experience that everybody should probably go through.
Yeah. And, you know, and I think that it works in life as well. You know, taking yourself out of that comfort zone, trying something new. The world is such a big place and there's so much to explore. And if you just stay so tight and in your bubble and you're scared of this and you want to just do this, you know, it's to me, not a good way to live. So I think too, and then this is also an analogy to life, because hot sauce is a thing that you can grow to love. It's a tolerance that you can build. You can maybe try something so spicy and then be scared of it and swear off spicy food forever, but that's the wrong attitude. What you got to do is start with your classic sort of Louisiana, the bottles that are on every diner table, or your classic Franks. You work your way there. You start there. You start in just a baby step. You just take a little baby step. And then you know what? After a while, maybe you want to crank it up just a little bit more. Then you start going into something a little bit different. And as you start to crank these things, you'll find different, more complex flavor profiles. As you experiment with your other food, you'll find pairings that work in a different way. And I think the most valuable thing that I've learned about hot sauce, like wings, I'm done with. I've sworn off wings. If I'm not on the clock, I'm not eating wings. You know, people call me like, where's the best wings in Seattle? Like, I don't know. I don't have this encyclopedic knowledge of wings. I have almost a Pavlovian response when I see them. You won't see me at a Super Bowl party eating them. I'm over wings. But hot sauce is something that I've grown to love even more, visiting with these hot sauce makers, learning the stories, and then trying with their guidance, this pairing, that pairing, kicking it up a little bit here. And then the higher you go, the more often you eat it, the more comfortable you are. And then where you know it, just slathering that up everything and wondering how you even lived life before without it. So I think that's an analogy for life. It works with hot sauce, and that would be my advice. Just take a little baby step, and before you know it, just like I was talking about earlier, you swim to keep from drowning. All of a sudden you see that you swam a very far way. So I think that works for hot sauce and in life.
So Sean, as you're saying this and talking about hot wings and how you've sworn them off other than being on the clock, Judd Apatow has said famously that he made all the movies so he could get the really good time for his stand-up set. And he didn't know it at the time. So Sean has become famous. What is the thing that you can now do, either as a next act or as a whim, that you couldn't have done before you were famous?
Well, every opportunity, I think, comes from that. I think that I never had a 5-year plan. I still don't. I'm not somebody that thinks that way, because now I've learned to respect the ebbs and flows of life so much. I went from working in a cubicle in Chicago to having 3 roommates in New York in a matter of 30 days, like at a time that, like, if you would have told me April 1st that on May 1st, I'd be in New York, I'd have absolutely no idea like what you're talking about or where that came from. If you told me when I came to New York that one day we'd put like 10 million subscribers up on this thing and have Oscar winners and Grammy Award winners and some of the most famous people on the planet sitting down with me to eat chicken wings, never would have believed that. So at this point, I always just feel like somebody who's grabbing doorknobs, and whichever doorknob's open, boom, I run into that room, and the next thing I'm looking for is another doorknob to turn. So I feel like I'm in that mode where I'm doing 10 laps around any expectation that I ever had for myself. And now I'm just trying to, the more I do it, the more you grow, the more you take yourself out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable the uncomfortable becomes. So I've just now gotten to a point of embracing that and then taking advantage of that opportunity by just devoting it to the craft of writing interviews and producing these shows. Like, to me, that is the thing, is just this singular sort of wax on, wax off focus on that thing, and then just see what in me it can unlock and see wherever my potential is. But the way that it has kind of worked out so far is that it's a process that I love. I love walking a mile in someone else's shoes, finally sitting down with that person and then having that experience. So that's where I'm at, is just staying attached to that, seeing how far we can take this show and what its potential actually is. And along the way is just trying to be the best interviewer I can.
We'll let you go after this, but I want to know, if you were being quizzed for the largest sum of money you could imagine, or the biggest point of pride ever, you're on a game show, you get to pick the topic, a specific topic. What is your topic?
Chicago architecture, maybe. Like, if I were going in that trivia, maybe I'd lean back on all that source material that I have in my head and then hope for the best, because at the end of the day, I am an expert in nothing and just have like a subtle intellectual curiosity about a lot of things. But I know a lot about nothing.
Sean, congratulations on all of your success. I still, after talking to you for an hour and watching your show, I can't believe you weren't just ad-lib, glib guy on the architecture tour. I don't know how you sublimated that.
Maybe, but maybe that's my final form. Like, maybe this whole thing is headed towards that direction. So when I come back, you got to hop on Chicago's First Lady, Jason, Len. I'm going to give you guys the tour, and who knows, I'll maybe have some zingers, little pokes, little this, little that. I'll have the whole place rocking.
Love it.
Love it. Sean Evans from Hot Ones, thank you so much for joining us here on Stocks Degrees.
Thank you so much. And I do just want to say, like, it's such an honor to be on the show. Like I said, you guys are like the soundtrack, the thing that keeps me connected to the team. But bigger than that, just as a broadcasting team, Jason, Steve, Len, DJ, it's outstanding. I have MLB TV, so sometimes I catch the feeds on everybody else, not naming names, but it really is a cream to the top and such a gift to the fans of the White Sox and such a gift to baseball to have this kind of broadcasting team. So I just want to say, honor to be here and so cool to meet you guys.